Hey students, this is lesson 9.3. So we're going to learn how to solve quadratic equations a couple of different ways. One way is by doing the square root. The other way is by looking at a graph. Go ahead and do this vocab section and you can check back with your answer. All right, a quadratic equation is an equation that can be written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a is not equal to 0. This is called standard form. A couple examples. These two are not in standard form because they're not written equal to 0. So draw a line from each quadratic equation to the equivalent equation. You can solve quadratic equations by a variety of methods. One way is to graph the related function and look for the zeros. So what we're saying there is this: if we graph this equation, y equals the related function y equals x squared minus 16, and look for where the value is 0, that'll be the solution to the equation. So let's try that, but we're going to use our calculator to do that. So here's our graph, and we want to put the equation, the related function, x squared minus 16 in here. And what we're looking for when we graph this, we want to know where it's equal to 0. And I don't really need to see the whole graph, I just need to see a certain part of the graph. The part I need to see is right here. We want it to equal 0, so we're looking for the zeros. And there's actually, if you press trace on your calculator, there's actually a function that can help you find it. You could just trace the line up until the cursor gets to the 0 and then kind of estimate it there. At this point you'd say, I think it's about 4, but we do have a function that can help us get a little more exact on our calculator, and it's number 2 here, which is the 0. Now it's going to ask you for the left bound, which means where you think the 0 is, your cursor has to be to the left side of it. And since the line is going down this way, the left side is to that side of the 0. And so I'm going to press enter there. Now it asks for right bound, which means go to the right side. And notice those two cursors that come up here. What you're doing is showing it you want to know the 0 between those two. So right in there. And if you press enter one more time, it'll show you that. Okay? And it says that 0 is 4. Now you can find the other one is on the other side. You can trace and then use your cursor to go over it. Quick way to move, you know that's probably close to -4, so you could just enter that on your keyboard when you hit trace and move it over there. And we are right on there, and since y is equal to 0, we know that -4 is the other 0. So the solutions to this equation are x is equal to -4 and x equals 4. Okay? So to do the next one, we'll just put that equation in, the quantity x minus 2 squared equals 0. So press your y equals, and parenthesis, I'm going to graph that one. And that one, go ahead and press my trace button. It looks like it's touching 0 somewhere around here. I'm going to introduce you to another function on your calculator here. We know it's somewhere around here. Let's trace down there. And then press zoom. And number 2, zoom in. So we want to get a little clearer picture. You have to hit enter. Every time you hit enter, you'll zoom in more. But by zooming in, I can tell that it seems like there's only one 0. So I'm going to press trace again now, and then do my 0 function to go to the left side of where I think that touches. Right about there should be good. Press enter. Go to the right side. Press enter. Enter one more time. And we got a little error here. No sign change. What that means is I think it doesn't think it's touching the graph there. So let's try one more time. Second trace 2. Well, the other thing we know is if this doesn't work, then we'll try the minimum. So enter, that's my left bound. Enter, right bound. It's not liking that. So we're going to do trace, and let's do the minimum, which is number 3. Left bound, right bound. Enter. And that is y equals that. Sometimes your calculator, and this is where you have to be careful with your calculator because it is not exact when you do this. But notice this is really close to 2. And this number is actually really close to 0. It's scientific notation, so it's times 10 to the negative 12. So it is really close to 0. So we're going to say that x equals 2. And in fact, you can see that if we did 2 minus 2, we would get 0. And there really isn't another solution. So the last one, if we graph that one, so here's the equation. Now if I use my standard screen, and you can always press zoom 6 to get back to your standard screen, you don't even see that equation on that screen. And so you're going to have to make your screen a little bigger. A quick way to do that is just to zoom it out, number 3. And then we see it. Okay. Now we want that to equal 0, but we got a problem here because here's the 0, right? And this graph only comes down to here, and some of you know it only comes down to 10 because the y-intercept is 10. But what that says, there is no 0, so essentially there is no solution to this problem. All right, I'm going to let you try some of those, and I'll check back with you. All right, another way we can solve this by using square roots. To solve this using square roots, what you want to do is isolate the squared term. To do that, we would just add 45 to both sides. And we get 5x squared is equal to 45. And divide by 5 to further isolate the squared term. So now we have x squared equals 9. And so now all we have to do is figure out what number times itself equals 9. And that's 3 and negative 3. So go ahead and try that method. A little quicker, more exact when you can use it. All right, let's solve this problem using some of our new methods. It says the length of a rectangular prism is 3 times the width. So the length of a rectangular prism is 3 times the width. So let's call this W. So then that would be 3W. The height is 5. So that would be that one. If the volume of a prism is 80, what is the length of the prism? The volume is equal to length times width times height. So the volume is equal to 80. So we can substitute 80 for V. And that's equal to our length, which is 3W, times our width, which is W, times our height, which is 5. That will simplify to 15W squared. Now we want to isolate the W, so we're going to divide both sides by 15. And I'm just going to simplify that and just leave it as a fraction. 5 goes into 80 16 times, and goes into 15 3 times. And now we need to do the square root And I can forget about the negative square root here because we're talking about a dimension, so it has to be a positive number. So W is equal to the square root of 16 thirds. And I can now approximate that if I want. Square root of 16 thirds. Just use my calculator. About 2.3 is good. So we'll say approximately 2.3 for the width. And then the length we can get if we need that. It says what is the length of the prism? So we got to multiply that by 3. So about 6.9. All right, I'll let you try that. All right, go ahead and try the lesson check. See if you understand what's going on here. That's the end of this lesson. I'll see you tomorrow.